as the Jamaican Beatles. That was the kind of vibe. It was like hit after hit after hit. And they were a band that you loved and respected. And we were fortunate to be inspired by the music of Jamaica. So Bob was a great inspiration to many people.
Brinsley Ford, a friend of Bob Marley, who would have been 80 years old today. Brinsley was speaking to my colleague Anna Foster. And that's it from this edition of News Air. From me, Tim Franks, and the rest of the team here in London. Thanks for your company.
This is the BBC World Service, and World Questions is coming from Lithuania.
Its young people are said to be the happiest in the world, but the anti-tank defences on its borders are a reminder of the threat from Russia. After Ukraine, some fear Lithuania could be next. In the capital Vilnius, we'll debate the challenges ahead.
World Questions, Saturday at 12 GMT. In 60 Minutes, OS with Mark Lowen.
The warmest January on record comes on the heels of the Los Angeles fire, the Valencia, Florida's Hurricane Helene, Philippines typhoons. The extreme weather seems endless. We'll ask, do we feel overwhelmed by climate change news, and is it actually changing policies?
This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Welcome to The Inquiry with me, Tanya Beckett, on the BBC World Service. Policymakers have been struggling with managing their economies in the wake of the COVID pandemic.
In some countries, when it was clear that the government was not going to step in and help with energy costs, then wage demands rose very significantly and stayed there.
Has there been a reluctance to accept that a great deal has changed?
Because we were in such a long period of low inflation and people were telling each other that this would be the case for a long period of time, they were hesitant to act with monetary policy.
Now things are back on a more even keel, but uncertainty still lingers.
We're walking a very tricky line between addressing inflation by keeping interest rates high enough, but really worrying that could it all go wrong at some point.
This week on The Inquiry, we're asking, where are we in the battle against inflation?
Hello, I'm Eileen McHugh with the BBC News. President Trump has insisted that no US troops would be needed as part of his proposal for the US to take over Gaza after removing more than 2 million Palestinians. In a fresh social media post, he said this was because Israel would hand over the territory to Washington when the fighting was over. Nomia Iqbal in Washington explains.
There are elements here that have already been contradicted by his own officials, but essentially saying Gaza would be turned over to the US by Israel. Israel would expel all the Palestinians and the US would then become the occupying power, but there'd be no US troops in Gaza, and then Gaza would be rebuilt. As unrealistic as Mr. Trump's proposal is, and he has opened up that question about how do you reconstruct Gaza. Remember, this is a man who appealed to his supporters by saying he doesn't believe in nation building, he doesn't believe in getting involved in conflicts overseas, so this is why it's really vague.
Sales of Tesla electric cars have fallen sharply in several European markets, partly, it's thought, in reaction to the involvement of its owner, Elon Musk, in politics. Trade figures from Germany show that just under 1,300 Teslas were registered in January, down by nearly 60% compared with January last year. Warren Bull reports.
The recent recovery in demand for electric cars in European markets has not been experienced by the world's largest EV maker. France, Sweden and Norway have all registered year-on-year falls in Tesla sales, but the biggest drop has been in Germany. Analysts there say it reflects a growing desire among consumers to disconnect from brands linked to Elon Musk. Since becoming an advisor to Donald Trump, the world's richest man has made several controversial interventions in European politics, especially in Germany, where he's very vocally backed the far-right AfD party ahead of this month's elections.
Warren Bull reporting. Protesters have demolished and set fire to buildings connected to the ousted former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, and leaders of her party. A mob used bulldozers to smash Ms Hasina's family home in Dhaka, which was a museum to her late father, who led the movement for independence from Pakistan. Here's Ambrasan Etirajan.
The protest started on Wednesday evening after the news that the deposed leader Sheikh Hasina would address doing a Facebook Live talking to her supporters in the country. She is currently in India. First, they set fire, several items from the buildings were overthrown, and then they started bringing heavy equipment, and it continued also in 14 different districts where the murals, the memorials belonging to Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of Sheikh Ms Hasina, and also of Awami League Party, different buildings are being attacked.
Amarasan Etirajan reporting. This is the latest world news from the BBC.